All right, I'm still here. And I think I remember reading an email, and then I noticed. See, what happens is I added up all the videos on the big computer, which holds all of the content, all the data, holds everything. It's a monster. It cost me a lot of money to get it custom built, and I'll bet you I have at least a dozen external hard drives full of content, and none of that ever gets connected direct link to the internet, ever, as a rule. And so what happens is I will put all the content, the emailed stories that aren't read yet, I put them all in a folder, put it on the big backup drive, and then I will erase that from the SD card that the camera took, and then I will slowly but surely transfer that content into the editing program, edit up the videos, export them to another external drive, and then that external drive gets brought over to the laptop that's hooked to the internet, and then they get loaded, delivered to you. And in that sequence of events, there's a video that didn't load correctly onto the drive, but I had deleted it from the program after it exported. And then I found out it didn't export correctly when I went to load it on YouTube. I'm like, oh no, that means there's probably 4 or 5 emails lost, and I don't know which ones they were. But I do thankfully remember one of the sentences in one of the emails, which was, I caught this thing watching some runners. So I did a search in my notes and I found it. Sorry about that babble, I'm just explaining. So if I did screw up, and I did manage to share this in another email, apologies now, but I'm pretty sure I didn't. So let's get on with it. Hi Steve, I'll get right to it. I've had a number of encounters with these beings ever since I was a child. I never really knew it. After I physically saw one while elk hunting near Packwood, Washington, I basically snuck up on it, watching some runners stretch, which of course pissed me off since these kids ruined a great place to spot elk. But what the hell can you do? While I was kind of watching them, something caught my eye to the left, and that was my first encounter. I have no doubt that it knew I was there, but still kind of freaky. I quickly left the area, got my truck, and left for home. I've had a few other whoops, howls, and some wood knocks around Stevens Pass area, of which close to where I grew up. I never really felt like I was in danger from then until on June 23rd, 2019. I did a solo hike to one of my favorite lakes in the area, Lake Ethel. I've done it many, many times in my past and didn't think anything of it by hiking there alone on this day. I started off and everything was picture perfect. No wind, no extraordinary sounds, just footsteps, birds, and the occasional light wind rustling, whatever it could grab. I made it to the lake and it was starting to get a little cloudy, and the wind picked up, so I thought I wouldn't fish and started heading back to the truck. We had been caught in summer snowstorms at this lake in the past and didn't want to take a chance. The trail from the lake heads up a light ridge and then follows it a little bit and then crosses some power lines and then switchbacks to the trailhead. When I reached the top of the ridge, I heard something about 150 yards to my left. Thinking it was a deer or a bear running away, I sat there watching to see if I could get a glimpse of it, but I didn't. So I started heading down the ridge. So did the steps. Thumps and snaps followed me as well. When I stopped, of course it stopped. It started to creep me out at this point. When I made it to the power lines, I felt a relief since it was wide open and you can see both directions as well as all around me. Another group of people consisting of about 3 adult ladies and 6 kids were coming up the trail. Not to alarm them, but to warn them, I told them there was a deer messing around further up the trail. This kept their eyes open and looking around without scaring them. Well, that's a good one. When I was done looking at the views, I started off the back down the trail, and here's where I got really frightened. And I have seen combat while I was in the Corps. During the switchbacks down, this thing knew exactly where the switchbacks were. I would stop and go from the most western point of the switchback to the next western point and not following me the rest of the trail. It knew exactly where I would be at a particular time and would situate itself to ambush me. Luckily, it never did. Made it back to my truck, got out of there, and never been back. The next day, I brought a pistol and a holster and always take it with me in the woods. 40 years of hiking these woods, and I became a huge believer of yours and Dave's message in an hour episode. I asked a Forest Service worker about the area, and he/she told me that they don't go up in that area unless they absolutely have to because of the weird things that take place up there. And a local Sasquatch dude here, an honest, knowledgeable, good guy in the field, there are some, and I'm lucky enough to have met one locally, said the same thing by saying that there are some weird things happening up there. Anyway, since that day, my head swivels, my pistol/rifle is ready to go when I go hiking now. Hope things are well. Take care, Stan. All right, Stan. I appreciate you, man. I appreciate you sending that in and sharing it with all of us. It's a big effort to email somebody and tell a story. It just is. And I really appreciate that. And good work on going armed and packing when you feel you need to. Tell you what, there's nothing wrong with that. Hi, Steve. Just a quick intro on myself. My name is Rod Benfield, and I've had an interest in these beings since 1980. I'm an Australian. I live in Queensland for most of my 61 years, 62 in May, and I'm the eldest of 8 brothers and sisters. We are an ex-military family who have traveled all over Australia and even spent around 3 years living on Penang Island in Malaysia while my father was posted to Butterworth Air Base on the mainland. When my father left the RAAF in 1976, we returned to be with our other family members. I have lived in coastal towns, etc., but our main family interest is in running cattle and some of our large cattle properties around Australia and in the state of Queensland. Over the years, I've watched the growing interest in the phenomenon of the Sasquatch, Bigfoot, Yowie, and various names given to the other variants of what we now should know as another race of people. Please forgive me for this being so long, so I will get into it. My first ever experience was back in 1980, when myself and father were out shooting kangaroos at the back of a place called Imbolin, Queensland. While we were walking and talking, looking for the local roos that were eating local crops, breaking fences, and causing all sorts of problems for local farmers, as we were walking up to the highest point of the hill, we heard a very loud roar, which ended with a reverberation when it stopped. The noise gave both of us chills. That in itself was strange, as both my father and I had heard tigers roaring, elephants, and various species of large type apes while we lived in Asia. Not even the roar from a tiger came close. Both of us decided, after expressing our concern of what was decided, we should head home for breakfast and take what we heard as a warning to leave. Mate, I know this sounds like a ramble, but this is my very first experience and is what started me on my personal quest for answers. This experience has sent me down the rabbit hole and back again several times. But while investigating for myself, I have learned and acquired a vast collection of knowledge on the subject, while always learning and expanding my knowledge and experience. What I will try to tell is an experience with one of these beings that I was not seeking out or even looking for this day. Every 12 months, my brother-in-law and me would go out to a local forestry work crew and pick up logs for a local guy who had his own hobby sawmill and made his own bush-style furniture. During the week of picking up the logs, we would do around 6 trips with around 4 large logs per load. On the first trip out to collect the logs, we traveled over unsealed bush tracks, which took around 1.5 hours to get to the location. On the way to the first pickup, I told my brother-in-law to stop so I could find a tree to relieve myself. So he pulled over to the side of the road so I could get out and do what I needed to do. For some reason, instead of going to the closest tree like an idiot, I went through the barbed cattle fence to a big tree I had picked out. No sooner when I started to leave myself on the tree than I heard growling and a roar along with the sound of trees breaking. Basically, all hell broke loose around 300 meters in front of me, just behind the edge of a dry creek bed. I stopped what I was doing without thinking, and just as I started to run back to the truck, knowing that the barbed wire fence would probably get me hung up, what I saw coming over the edge of the creek bed was something you can't unsee. A hairy man was angry, drooling, etc. The people that have told me, which are few, ask, how did I know he was pissed? I think the giveaway was that there is no whites visible, just red and bloodshot where the white should be. Also, he covered around 300 meters in around 9 seconds, while still pulling trees out and pushing them over. I have an image firmly implanted in my mind. The descriptions I have heard reported have been of something with long, thick hair, and yes, I have seen them like that in the past, but this bloke must have been fairly young because he hardly had any hair on his head. The hair on his arms was long but not thick, and you could see dark skin through the hair. The arms were slightly longer than a human. I don't think his legs were shorter. Maybe the long arms give that appearance, but this being was really built. He was like a bodybuilder. and chiseled in granite. I can remember thinking, if this thing gets me, I'm stuffed. Well, they would only find pieces anyway. The big fellow was nearly on top of me, and I thought, this is it, all over. But I'd started to head towards the fence, and believe it or not, I slid under the bottom rung of barbed wire and not got snagged. Slid through the drain and hit the front wheel of the truck. I reckon with enough force to give momentum to hit the first step to get back in the truck. When I was in the back of the truck, I looked back to see if he was still coming, and he was nowhere to be seen. All the ruckus had stopped, and I could hear the bush noise again. This all took around 20 seconds. It could have been longer, but I won't split hairs. When I got in the truck after I'd calmed down, I asked the brother-in-law, did he see what happened? He had a smirk on his face and just said, what, did that big buck deer get up to you? This is the closest experience I have, Steve, and I've been collecting my own data for myself for the past now 42 years. I also believe that those that have had a close experience eventually show signs of PTSD. What helps me personally is my search for the truth. Please forgive me for the pun, but the truth is out there. Steve, I really appreciate all that you're doing for others that have experienced a setting these things. People often are curious and ask, what do they look like? I have to say that they aren't pretty. And after you see one, you can't put back what you see. P.S. Steve, you can use my name if you want. And just one more thing, over 42 years of my search for the truth, I've only seen up to now 9 that have shown themselves. Well, holy shit. Rod, that is one hell of an experience to live through. And obviously something else to share with the world, right? I absolutely appreciate you saying that into us and sharing with the people, man. What a hell of an experience, and what a sight to see. I haven't had anything raging at me yet. I know it's coming, probably. Well, who knows? I don't know. I put myself smack dab where these things are, basically 6 days a week, I'd guess, but they don't seem to be pissed off with me yet. You know, listening to a lot of these emails, when these beings, when they want you to know they're pissed off, they sure get it across quite clear, don't they? It's like how we say about like a grizzly bear raging. I used to always complain, I'd be joking with my friends in camp saying, they built these things, they could basically destroy a pickup truck if they felt like it. Why did they have to throw in the attitude to boot? Something so intimidating, yet it was designed and given and created with the ability to become an absolutely frothing at the mouth, raging, maniacal monster, right? What a deadly combo. First off, to be built and created that physically, and then throw in that attitude. Tell you what, sometimes it just doesn't seem fair, does it? Hi, Steve. My name is also Steve. I live in Minnesota, USA. Big fan of your work. Lately, there seems to be a lot of talk on this channel and others, i.e. David Paulides, about people experiencing feelings of dread and danger. I wanted to relay on an experience I had while I was overwhelmed with an anxiety, intense feeling of dread and impending doom. While I spent a decent amount of time in the woods hiking or camping, and I've had strange things happen there, this very bizarre incident happened in the city of Minneapolis near Mississippi River, where young men have been found dead after going missing. See David Paulides' book, A Sobering Coincidence. This happened late one summer night around 2002 when I was a young man in my early 20s. At that time, I worked for a mom-and-pop mail-order catalog company where I'd assembled some small products we sold. This particular night, I decided to pull an all-nighter and bang out as much product as possible. I was paid per piece assembled. This is something I'd often do, as I preferred to work at night after all the other employees had clocked out and gone home. The building was old, creepy, and located in a not-so-great part of town. Even still, I usually felt right at home and safe. It was about 1 a.m. After pouring myself a cup of coffee and having a smoke break, I was ready to settle in for 4 or 5 more hours of slaving away. I had more than enough work to keep me busy until dawn. It was then, as I was about to resume my work, that I suddenly became overwhelmed with an intense feeling of utter dread and impending danger. I felt waves of panic washing over me. It felt like literal waves. I hadn't felt anything like it before or since. Every hair on my body stood on end, and my body was covered in goosebumps, as it is now just recalling the incident. And my inner voice began to scream at me, leave now, get out, go, leave now, get the F out of here, Steve, now, go, 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 go. I was terrified and confused. I stood there frozen as waves of fear and dread continued to slam against me. Something primitive in the depths of my being shouting at me, "Go, leave, get the F out now, go home now, go, 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 go." It was then in my mind's eye I had a vision of two men, one white and one black, wearing hoodies. The shadow from their hoods hid their eyes from me, but I could tell by the expression on their faces they were not friendly. They were downright dangerous. As quickly as the vision came, it left, but the overwhelming sense of impending danger and waves of dread continued, along with the instructions to pack my stuff up and hit the bricks. With my adrenaline pumping, I gathered my belongings and began to hostily turn off machines, computers, and lights, to lock doors and make my way to the exit. I was about to walk out the door when I had a moment of clarity. "This is stupid," I said. "I have tons of work to do." So with the panic beginning to ease, I flipped a few lights back on and returned to the basement to resume working. I removed my backpack and set it on my desk. The moment my bag landed on the desk, the feeling of dread returned, as did the voice inside me. "No, Steve, what are you doing? Get the F out of here now. Go now. Go, 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 go. Leave now. Go." So I ran back upstairs and out the door onto the streets of Minneapolis, adrenaline rocking through my body. I felt like I was on cocaine. I headed to the bus stop where I'd normally catch a ride across the river to my apartment in St. Paul. But my inner voice said to stay off of the bus, to walk home and don't stop. It was a 4-mile walk through some crummy neighborhoods, but for some reason I knew I'd be safer on foot and to under no circumstances catch a bus. Well, I made it home without incident. I was so shaken up, but I didn't know why or how. I was prepared to return to work the next day to find the building had been burglarized or burned to the ground, or hear of a major crime in the vicinity. Nothing happened. I'm not sure what caused a sense of dread or danger, or my flight response, but I think it possibly saved my life. I often wonder what would have happened to me had I ignored this warning. I'm glad I listened to my gut. I've got a couple of other weird stories I'll share later. A glitch in the Matrix while cycling/camping on the north shore of Lake Superior, and one where a group of us felt like we were being watched while hiking deep into Superior National Forest in northern Minnesota, not far from Ontario. Thanks for all the work you do, and the great videos and the amazing backdrops you choose. Steve from Minnesota. Right on, Steve. Thanks for that, man. And we all have our sixth sense. We all have our gut instincts, and none of us are taught or trained to manipulate them more maturely as a child, as we should be. And I think it's just hammered out of us, right? It is what it is. But thanks for sharing that. I'm quite certain there's going to be hundreds of people that can relate with you with that, without a doubt. As I can, for sure. All right, what do we got? Hey, Steve, this is Frank Petoski. Petoski or Petoski? My wife and I met you at Quinault, and I shared my encounter with you then. Okay, right on, Frank. Good to hear from you, man. And say hi to your wife. I thought I'd throw my story out there to share on your channel in case a viewer might benefit from hearing it, which I'm certain they will. Night before opening day, deer season around 1979 in Randall, Washington. I arrived at my usual camp area and found it empty of hunters, which was unusual. Empty of other hunters, which is unusual. I found it empty of other hunters, which was unusual. Since I arrived at dark, I set out to make a fire. I pulled into the field and slowly drove around looking for firewood with my headlights. I had my driver's window down to get a better look at the ground as I drove around looking for wood. When I was within about 20 yards of the tree line, suddenly an unbelievably loud guttural vibrating roar came to me with full force. It lasted for at least 10 full seconds. I was petrified. I felt the impact of this roaring yell in my chest. I'm very familiar with all the various sounds in these woods, as I have hunted them regularly for 50 years. This was absolutely nothing I'd ever heard prior or since. I had my hunting rifle right beside me, and I did not even think about touching it. Instead, I slammed my vehicle into reverse, floorboarded it, and fishtailed until I hit the gravel road. Slammed into drive and then drove like a bat out of hell away from the area, getting airborne many times along this road, and drove a good 40 minutes before I stopped, when I found another hunter camped on an entirely different mountain. I pulled up near his camp and stayed awake in my vehicle all night until morning. I was terrified and the feeling stayed with me for quite some time thereafter. Even today, when I'm out in the woods, the memory of this encounter is always in the back of my mind. I'm surprised at the sheer number of encounters you continue to share, and really appreciate your efforts in all you're doing for this topic and beyond. If you decide to form that army you mentioned, let me know. Take care, Frank Pitsoki. Frank, you spelt your name differently. In the header, it says from Frank Pitosky Jr. In the end, it says from Frank Pitsoki. I'm going to go with the first one, Frank. And again, thank you so much for sharing that, man. I appreciate it. I'm sure somebody who's familiar with the exact same area you just mentioned is going to appreciate you shared that here too. I wonder how long it's going to take till I get that roar blast right behind me when I'm reading one of these stories one day, right? I wonder when. And yeah, the amount of encounters that are coming my way and emailed into me are obviously right over the frickin' top. It's amazing. It just doesn't. It's not ending. The good thing is, I have a feeling the reason being is, like I mentioned in another video, it's this channel is about the people, for the people, by the people, right? It's not controlled. It doesn't have some egomaniac standing at the head of the camera claiming to be the fact checker, right? Which I find is, it just makes me laugh. I know there's some people who I absolutely respect who do go out of their way to vet many emails, and all the power to them. And although I may not agree with many people on all topics, which is fine, for me personally, I do believe that every man has a voice that counts, and I don't think you would be able to deliver to me any single individual who I would agree upon should be the one to vet anything. But that's just me. And what else can I say with that? You know, there's been a handful of people who have lashed out at me in the past too via emails, or there's some of the comments which have been forwarded to me from people I know saying, if Steve doesn't agree with you, look out, or you'll be blocked or deleted or whatever. And I don't know where people get that from. I have never deleted or come down on somebody who doesn't agree with me on anything in my lifetime. But what I have done in the past, and currently do today and will do tomorrow, is when somebody comes online or comes anywhere and attacks me, then we're going to get it on. And I will be the last man standing. And if I'm not, I'll keep coming back at you until I am. And that's just the way it is. So I think that attitude and what I do in that department when I get attacked and I fight back like I should, that gets confused for some people, and they confuse that with thinking that's what happens when you disagree with me, whereas it's not the case. Okay? So if you don't agree with me, that's great, that's fine. You're still welcome here, and you have a position at the round table of knowledge, because that's how we get knowledge hashed out and dispersed evenly amongst the people, by the people. Anyway, I think both my butt cheeks and my legs have gone to sleep now, so I better get up and keep moving and slowly work my way down off this mountain. And I will have a lot more to share shortly with all of you, from all of you.